What's up, everybody? This is your girl Erica from Just Stock Profits. I'm here with my co-host Diamond Dave, and this week has been very interesting in the stock market. So we hopped on here on a very beautiful weekend to drop a Saturday to get you prepared and ready to take on the market for the rest of June. So, hello, introduce yourself to our audience, Dave.
How you doing, Erica? My name is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world options trading course. And really happy to come this week because what we're going to see this week is a lot of volatility. And I really think that if you really understand how to kind of look at this, you can make a lot of money this week, but you also could potentially make a lot of money in the future. So once you kind of understand these setups, understand these scenarios, and I'm going to kind of go kind of deep into it, but also go enough surface level so we can get it to a broad audience, but also for my traders or the people that want to get into trading, kind of understand how a trader will look at these particular scenarios as a way to make money. I know a lot of people that made a lot of money last week off these two particular tickers that we're going to really focus on. There's going to be a lot of money to be made off of it this week and then on into the future. So I want to help the audience, especially with this particular show, understand the perspective that you need to take to get money out of the market, to minimize your risk, to not lose a lot of money, and then start to understand what I call a setup or a scenario to where you can now kind of forecast this. When you see this in other type of scenarios, this is going to be a good position to make money. We're going to kind of talk about, because of a lot of secular changes in the market, we're going to see these type of scenarios over and over and over again, because what I really believe, and we're going to kind of look back in the future, is 2020, I think, is going to be the tipping point to where the market totally changed, and it brought a lot more people into the market, and it started changing to what we perceive a person in the market to look like.
Yep.
And we're going to kind of look like back at that, that's what the years. And I remember, because I'm old enough, that when Napster became a thing, before it was mainstream, but when we were using it online and downloading MP3s, I remember me saying, everything's going to change now because I no longer got to leave my house to buy music. And then all of a sudden it went a lot more broad. And now I have a niece and nephew that are like 12, 13 years old. They don't even know what it's like to buy music at the record store. So what I think we're seeing in 2020 is this going to be the year where everything changed in the market, where a lot more people got into the market, understand how to become profitable, how to make money. And so what we're going to try to do is help keep bringing that change into 2020 and keep pushing.
You know what's funny about you saying that? I used to work at Best Buy as a teenager.
Okay.
And I remember companies paid to have their CDs in certain locations, certain positions. And at the time I was like, that didn't make sense to me because we always had to keep moving these CDs. But what it was is people would come into the store, grab this, it's near this, so they must be similar artists. Maybe you can hear a sample, maybe you can't, and pick it up. Barnes and Nobles to this day still sells a lot of music physically, because people will come in and be like, hey, I heard this song off a movie. And then they still have the wall. They still have the headset up. I was in Killeen maybe a week ago, and they still had the whole setup. And it was funny because I'm like, I actually bought music while I was there, right? And because it's like I could get to hear it. I'm big on supporting local artists or people in person. But when these changes happen in the marketplace, there's whole businesses that go under.
Yeah.
Right. So Edward Jones, I noticed, in a lot of the companies that they call it do with you and do for you. So do for you is Edward Jones. A lot of these people that you would just leave them money and set it and forget it, they even had to change their marketing this year. They're like, you can meet with us and talk about the strategies that we're going to use for your account. Like, it's a whole different conversation than before. Like, hey, you're busy, drop some money over here.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah, definitely. They're understanding that they're dealing with, especially with a younger demographic that wants to be more involved. And they want to kind of feel like they have, because they see people making money in the market. And so they don't necessarily want to do the model. When I remember when I started working in healthcare, once you get hired, they come in with the guys and they tell you how they're going to how they're going to invest your 401k. And you just essentially just give them permission to manage your money. You're dealing with a person now that actually wants to be an active investor in the markets, and they want to feel like they got some say so on where their money goes. So I think that's going to be the biggest changes. So did you want to go into AMC? GME first? Which one did you want to look at first?
Let's go AMC first.
Oh, yeah. Okay, hold on 1 second.
How you guys doing? Drop your city and state in the chat. Got a little bit of the coughs because it's been raining. The weather's been crazy. But I'm hoping a lot of people will get some good value out of this video, because AMC and GME is something like it's like a ongoing experiment. I expect a documentary out of these two stocks in the future, or a Wall Street Bets documentary. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. Sorry about that.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so we want to look at, would you want to do GME or AMC first?
AMC first.
Okay, so this is the thing with AMC. So I was telling some people this earlier because I did an actual content for my particular course. And so this is really, really important. AMC came out Friday, and what we saw is that it came out really strong and it started to really sell off really hard. And what we saw was that if you would have been looking, I'm not talking about you personally, but if a person would have been looking at maybe a historical 5-year chart or maybe a max chart, what we would have seen is that when AMC gets to a certain price point, it sells off. So if you go like to maybe 2015, it hit a certain price point around $35 and it sold back down. I think if you go to maybe 2019, we hit that same price point of around $35 and we sold back down. So then we saw the same thing on the 28th where we got around $35, $36 and we started to sell off. So what we're seeing is that the market really is not comfortable buying AMC over a certain price.
This is what it looked like a day ago.
Yes, ma'am. So you see how it came out really strong and then it started to sell off. And so what the market is telling us is that emotionally, we're not comfortable buying AMC over a certain price point. And what's interesting is that even with new buyers in the market, they're still not comfortable. So like, let's say we have a particular real estate area and we may feel like, you know what, we want to change this particular area from a real estate standpoint, but people in this area, because of their perception of this area and they'd having a history, they're not comfortable paying over a certain amount of money for a house in this particular area. What can happen is the way to get people to pay more money for housing in that area is to bring in new people. And a lot of times that will happen when the area will start to flip over is new people coming in that are comfortable paying a higher price point. What's interesting is that with AMC, even though there's new people in the market, they still were not comfortable paying over that $35 price point. So it's sold off. So what I want people to really understand is that when you start to really understand how to actually look at the markets and you can look at a longer term chart, you would have seen that that 35 is what we call a historical resistance. So once it hit that historical resistance, it came right back down. So that's what we saw happen on Friday. And then it just sold down and probably, I think, closed around 25, 26. Now, this has been a very volatile stock this week. I know people that made tens of thousands of dollars trading
this is
this
the
particular
5-day.
stuff.
It's crazy.
It's the 5 days. I'm saying. So it's rolled up pretty hard.
13 to 30 to back down.
Exactly. So if you came in at 13, you were probably very willing to sell at 35 because essentially, you know, you have already doubled your money. And what we're seeing with AMC that people have to understand is that the narrative is that they're going to short squeeze this stock. I think this is going to be very difficult to do because the float size is around 400, maybe almost 500 million. There's a lot of shares available to be traded by retail. And like I said before, is that we're seeing historically, the market is not comfortable paying over $35 a share. So can this go to 50 or 60? It may, but when you look at the amount of trading activity that it's doing, I don't think it's sustainable that this ticker is going to trade more than Apple or maybe Amazon over a long period of time. And so I think over Friday, it might have did literally 100-something million in trading activity. That's a lot, right? So we got to understand is that a lot of this particular behavior is abnormal. This is what I want the market to really understand. And this is what I mean from a standpoint of understanding how to look at the market to be able to make money. This is going to be a big weekend for movie releases because of the holiday.
Yes.
So we got Cruella coming out. That's a Disney movie. Yeah, we got Cruella coming out, and we also got another movie called Quiet Place. Now, both those movies are going to be shown at AMC. So what we want to find out is that because we got the long weekend, what do the movie numbers look like? Well, Cruella is also being released on Disney Stream. So now if Disney looks at that numbers and their attitude is, well, you know what, we did better numbers on Disney Stream than we did releasing it to AMC. That may give them the justification to no longer give movies to AMC. Because they may feel like it's a waste of time. We might as well just go straight to Disney Stream and pull it out of the theaters. Quiet Place, we just got to see what the numbers look like on that. So if AMC can report really good numbers for this holiday weekend, it'll look good for them. But this is what I want the market to understand. AMC has a massive amount of debt. They have like 11 billion in debt. Their cash flows are negative, and people that run businesses understand how important cash flow is in business. Eventually, that debt is going to choke them out. So what I think that AMC is going to do is they're going to do another offering. And if they can do an offering for, let's say, hypothetically, $1 billion at maybe the $20 price point, maybe the $18 price point, maybe the 22, what that can do is give them some liquidity to try to pay off some of that debt that eventually is going to choke them out, right? But if they do a offering, let's say at the $20 price point, they're currently trading at 26. So what is that going to do? It's going to increase the size of the float. Share price is going to come down.
Mm-hmm.
So as a trader, you got to start looking at the things from this perspective. I think there's the opportunity for a lot of downside opportunity to make money as a trader, but also as an options trader with this stock, because I think that the CEO, based on where it's trading, he's going to probably end up doing some kind of offering, because there's no other way for this company to all the equities in the share price now. There's not a lot of equity in the actual locations of the business. They don't have a physical product that they sell. They don't have a lot of collateral. So the equities in the share price, the only way really that he can raise money to try to get this company back on the feet is to issue new shares at a particular price that's going to be under the current ask, raise more capital, but at the same time, that's going to push the stock price down. So the way you can play this as a trader is play this to potentially also go up, but also potentially also go down. And I think the likelihood that it goes down is a lot higher than it goes up. Can it shoot to 100? Potentially. But I was going to play this to go down on Friday, but I got into another play because I saw it coming. Because like I said before, is that I'm looking at historical resistance at the price point, which is around $35.
Right. So something I'm, you guys know I'm very pro sales. What I look for when I see companies that are potentially struggling, I go look and see their sales company, right? Like Salesforce is always hiring, right? Certain companies are always hiring, like the stadium here, that the football games, the baseball games, all that. They're always hiring for salespeople. Now you're going to say, well, what do they need salespeople for? They go and call every school, every district, every karate dojo, you name it. They call homeschool associations and do what? Sell bulk packages of ticketing. So something we saw a lot here in Texas, Alamo Drafthouse was letting you rent the whole theater out, and so families were bringing like 12 people, but renting the whole theater out. Right. So that's how bad you could tell it was getting, is that they were renting, for hour blocks, 2 hour blocks at a time, a movie to a certain number of families. And you could tell it was working because when I went to call to see, they were already booked up for the rest of the week. And so what happens is AMC is going to have to go that route. They're going to have salespeople on the floor that, like, as school gets back in, calling up the daycares, calling up the little places. And it sounds silly, but that's literally what I've seen billion-dollar arenas do, right? The arena back in my hometown, they put like $72 million, ended up being $100 million when it was all said and done. But that's how them politics roll. And they call nonstop. They have 10 people in the office. Hey, we're trying to sell a pack of tickets. We're trying to sell the box tickets. We're trying to sell it, and that's the norm. And so that's what AMC is going to have to do. Call all the little guys. And it sounds silly, but that's literally what it works for stadiums and baseball leagues and basketball teams. So it's got to work for them too. That's something I saw and I meant to bring up before, but I'm like, they're just gonna have to go old school with it, like everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. They have to figure something out, because we talked about earlier before that the market is changing for this particular type of company. So they can be viable, but they're going to have to do business, like you said, being a lot more local, being a lot more localized, and also, like you said, doing a lot of outbound sales. So not assuming that people are going to just come to you because you're there. Do a lot more outbound sales, reach out, sell ticket packages, things of that nature. I knew a guy that used to work for the Hawks. He was really good at doing that. So yeah, so that is something that you're going to have to do. And also putting packages together. So what kind of package can we create for people the way we can sell them on it? It can be valuable to them. We can retain them as a customer, and then also they can tell other people about it, and also make it a place to where, hey, we have a special type of scenario where if you want to have a birthday, you want to have something like that, we have things here that we can provide for you to make that a special and type of memorable event. So I really think they're going to have to really work on this rebranding, and then they also have to show the movie distributors that if you put certain titles in our particular business, we can do well and justify you having that title in here. But I think that the CEO is going to have to do an offering. I think that they have to raise some more capital to try to pay off this debt. So that as a trader, that can create a lot of downside opportunity for you. So one thing we teach is you got to know how to make money when the market's going up, when the market's going down. As a trader, that downside opportunity, because how the market is going to perceive that offering is it's going to be a dilution event. So if you currently own the shares, your equity now becomes less. So then now, is it worth you now owning those shares at this particular price point, even though your equity has become less? And what that a lot of times does is it prompts people to sell off. And so what have you seen over the past 2 to 3 weeks? If you've seen a lot of bigger operators or bigger firms, they've sold out of this company. Retail now is heavily invested in this company. I'm gonna give people a heads up. Retail does not have what I call staying power. And what I mean by that is that big capital intensive firms that got a lot of capital, because they have so much capital, they can stay in a position long term. A lot of times retail moves in and out because they need their money. So there's a lot of downside opportunity for this particular company. I think by this summer, they're probably trading around the $10 mark. So if you look at this as an options traders, I would be looking at, and this is not investment advice, I would be looking at longer term contracts that are going to be at the money going out to maybe summer, maybe first of the year, to just walk this thing all the way on down, because I do believe that there's going to be a dilution event. I don't think the CEO doesn't have any choice but to do an offering.
What I'm thinking is, like, it was around $9 anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gets it back. I think the AMC crowd is not as strong as the GME crowd.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm gonna go with that. Like they gonna hang in there, but and at the end of the show, I want to bring back up a good point you brought in one of your videos about the iHeartRadio shares,
yes,
but we'll do that in the back end. Okay. So all right, so that's AMC. You would recommend people just focus on trying to get on out. Slide on out the door before they offer.
Yeah. If you bought in at $9 and $10 and it's not trading at 26, I would recommend that you take your money and run. And you don't have to take your whole position out, but take profit off the table. Because if they do a dilution event and it comes out, the information of the dilution event comes out before the market opens, it's going to tank it immediately when the market opens. If the news of the dilution event comes out while the market is going, it's going to tank it. So if you don't have your limit order or your stop order set in place, it's going to be going on while you're going to be doing what you're doing in the city. And you're going to look up at your account and you're going to realize that, you know what, my particular account for this particular company is negative because you got stuck in it while it sold off. And I really believe that we're going to get a dilution within the next 60 days.
So this is the 6-month chart. So if you look at February, you had this pop up going back down, right? And so again, I think this is just going to be the actual flow of this particular stock. Like, this is the 6 month. And then if you go here, this is the year, right? February, and the pop up here for June, basically. Okay, go 5 year. Look at the 5 year.
See?
It's been
See where it gets off and it just sold off. And that's what I'm saying. So then it popped up the one day, and it didn't even stay at $30-something for a full and extended period of time. It popped up and immediately came right back down.
And this is 5 years, y'all.
That's 5 years. So let's see how it opens up on Tuesday, because it closed at 26. So where does it open? And if it opens above 26, can it stay there? Because what we're seeing is that, buying behavior is emotional. People have to be able to accept buying something at a certain price inside their head. If they can't, then they're going to look for it at a lower price. Just like I can't accept buying a car for $100,000. So I look for a car at a lower price. So you got to understand is that people have to be able to emotionally accept buying something at a certain price.
So AMC erases his 38% rally and turns red, and while training ends up the week though at 116%. Then you go back. AMC short sellers dealt massive $1.2 billion blow after weekend long. So again, when you're talking about $1 billion, this is hedge funds. This is hedge funds. Like, these are people who are betting on this bad boy to go down. And I mean, that's like, I get it. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit GME stock.
Okay.
And take it away.
Okay, so we're looking at GME. Now, everybody knows about this because this stock has been running really hard. Got a really, really strong community behind it. At one time, it hit almost $500. Have been selling off since then. So what we're doing now is people in this particular play are looking for what I call like a second rally. So they're looking, hopefully, potentially, that this thing is going to pop back up. So to be very full disclosure, I am short this particular company with put contracts. I don't think that it can support this particular price point. And I also want to tell people that I think a dilution event is coming for this also. I think the only thing that GME can do to try to transition into this new era is to raise some capital. And one of the ways that they have to do it is, like I said, is their only equity is in the stock price. So I believe, and this may not be as soon as AMC, Cohen's going to come out and he has to figure out at what price point can I get somebody to buy this stock? Is it going to be at the 100? Is it going to be at the 80? And how many shares can I sell? And that's going to dilute the people that are currently in it. You got people that bought this thing at $400, $500. They're still in this deal.
The diamond hand.
Exactly. So they're going to get diluted, but they're not playing this for equity. They're playing this thinking they can get this thing to 1,000. But I don't understand how that's going to happen technically. It can happen, but I don't understand how that's going to happen technically. And so what I think is that to keep this business going, Ryan is going to dilute this. So I'm also playing this for the downside. I'm thinking at the $100 price point around the top of the year. And I think that GME will be under that by the top of the year because they have to do earnings, I think in a few weeks, I think in maybe July. And then they're putting out their NFT play in the summer. But I think they have so much work they have to try to do to transition this company. This to me is a great opportunity for downside. Now, will it maybe potentially spike back up? Yes. But what I'm saying is that I think the future of GME is under $100. So I'm looking to play this for the downside. And that's why I say understanding how to play the options market is very valuable because you don't get stuck in these type of plays because all you can do is play the upside. You can also understand how to play the downside. And then once you get a better understanding of the market, you understand what conditions can create that downside volatility. Because I had a really good feeling that when we came out on Friday, that this was going to sell off. And I also believe that it's also going to sell off on Tuesday. I think a lot of people are going to get nervous that bought in over $200. They're not really diamond hands. And when they see this thing starting to get under 200, they're going to look to exit and try to take the least amount of losses possible.
Yeah, what's tough is I feel like it's a principal fight. The more news it was getting, the more people be like, yes, let's push it up, push it up, push it up. But it doesn't have that strong news push this past. So this is the 5-day, y'all. It's been green over the 5-day, right?
Yeah.
Over the month. All right. Over the 6 month. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at February. 347.
Yep.
And again, $20 in December when it's game buying time to 347. I can just see some hedge fund dude just like throwing up.
Yeah.
Because that's not even funny. So anyway, it's headquarters in Grapevine. That's interesting. Let me go down here. And I'm going to tell y'all this. I know everybody's like, oh, who goes in store for some stuff? You have massive communities that go in the store. Hispanic communities, you have Asian communities, especially a lot of the shopping markets you see here. A lot of Asian and Indian customers go to the physical place. They want to look at it, touch it, all that. So it's not like they've disappeared. So AMC, GameStop, and Virgin Galactic short sellers down 2.7 billion this week. That's great. Bitcoin, GameStop, and NOI bets turned this flight attendant into a millionaire. That stories like that are always going to get you to more people, right?
Yeah.
GameStop rally extends to 35% as Reddit traders push up new meme stock feeding frenzy. Like, if I was a hedge fund, I'm like, who can I put some money on in that group to help me push some stocks I want?
Yeah, and I think that's taking place right now as we speak.
Oh, that according to them, they're like, careful who you listen to in the group. So
yeah.
Let me see. I love how they're talking smack on here. AMC and GME are not the only Reddit penny stocks to buy, according to Top Wall Street. So again, that to me is disrespectful, right? They weren't penny stocks. It wasn't dead yet, but it was pretty low. Look at this: $7, $5, let me see, $4.96 June last year. $4.15 in August.
And I played it. I played it when it was around the 20s. And I say it was like, there's no way this thing goes over $50. Because it's GameStop, and I think they have a good, but for a company to be worth to have their market cap, it doesn't really match their revenues. And that's the biggest issue is like, I like the market cap to be in some type of proportion to the revenue that they're bringing in. So now them trading at the 200. And I just think, and we saw that big slide down. We may be seeing right now the start of another slide down because we see that it hits a certain number and it sells off real hard, and it hits a certain number and it sells off. And we had a good long consolidation where, like, I give the Reddit guys credit, they just didn't sell. The problem is that if nobody comes in and buys at a higher price point than 222, it doesn't go anywhere. So it's just like you're just sitting on something. And the problem with having stock as opposed to having a house or something where you can generate some type of cash flows, if it doesn't appreciate, then it doesn't give you anything. And then also it's not paying a dividend. So you're just sitting on this share. And then the question is, well, you just essentially just parked your money. So you might as well just put your money in the bank. Because the question is, if you bought at 222 and you don't see it going up, and it also doesn't pay a dividend, then you've just parked your money. So then the question we talked about before, how long can you park your money before you say, well, let me just take my money out of here and go somewhere else? And I think that's what the funds are relying on, because we know that capital has staying power. They can sit in these positions for years and even take losses. And it's not going to be a big deal because they're making so much money in other areas.
And that's really what, and so I relate this even to my investment. Like, I'm in multiple investment clubs, like,
Okay.
and I sent that money out to go work. The average person, if they spend $1,000, they're like, oh my God, what is it doing? Where is it at? How can I get it back? Right. And I've experienced that even in my own investment club. So it's like, I'm very, very careful where I pick to choose now, because the average person, you don't invest money you can't risk to lose.
Yeah.
So if you bought, 5 shares at 200, okay, that's what you've done. Like, can you afford to lose that money? And honestly, a lot of people don't understand investing anyways. You don't use money you can't afford to lose. Right? Rule number 1, make money. Rule number 2, don't lose money.
Yeah.
So a lot of times what I'm seeing out here in the marketplace is people, they hear it, but they're not really absorbing it, and they haven't made a habit of investing. So it's like that money's burning a hole in their pocket because it's out there. Like, I can get it back. And that's the thing about stocks to me that's so, right? Even in real estate, when you're in investment groups where it's like a 3-year wait till we refinance, most people are like, okay, because they're at a different income bracket, and the average American just isn't there, right? If the average American can't get $400 up for an emergency, and they've got some GameStop shares at 200, they're selling.
Yeah. And you're 100% correct. I mean, and I don't know where, let's say you're in this GameStop deal at the 200, let's say the 150 to 200 price point. Like, where do you really think this is going? And then if it doesn't go there, how much of a loss are you willing to take when it starts to slide down?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think is that's really what happens, is that people go into these, and I think GameStop at that price point, it's kind of lost a lot of its luster, but it has had some staying power. We got to see as we go into the summer months where people continue to stay at it. And then if Cohen does do an offering, where does he do it? Because if he comes out and says, hey, he's doing an offering under $100 and you got it for $220, it's going to do another dilution event. It's going to push that price down, and it's going to eat all your equity up. And so you got to really realize what you're putting yourself into when you take these type of plays on. If you're bullish on GameStop as a business, it's a long-term play. It's not a short-term play. And you got to really watch the price that you go in at. Anytime you're investing, your entry price is going to always be really, really important based on what you think that particular return is going to be. You don't want to come in so high and take a lot of risk and get a low amount of return. So that's what you really got to understand.
For sure. And also, to point out this article, I was trying to show it. D. Feller said, I purchased AMC.
Okay. And I don't want to get in their business, but I would be interested at what price point they purchased it at.
For sure.
Yeah, but I think AMC is a lot more attractive because it's a lot less expensive.
So here's this one. Egyptian-born resident of Dubai. So
Okay,
I'm just trying to set up the article. His name is Andrew Dawood. So he's a flight attendant. Okay. And he took roughly 50,000 he had in savings. So again, if you're in Dubai, usually people who are working from another country in Dubai, they are living in usually in certain tight quarters. But if he's been a flight attendant, he's just been on the plane. Roughly 50,000 in savings into $1.7 million on a series of white knuckle bets on Bitcoin, Chinese electric vehicle maker NIO, and video game retailer GameStop over a 4-year period. So let me say that part again, a 4-year period. So he can technically call himself a millionaire, but he's risking it all of a goal of 3 million before 2025. And if I was him, I'd take my money and go.
I would take it. I would take it out.
Like, if you're a flight attendant and you went into this market, you got lucky, baby. Go ahead and take your money and go.
Take your money and put it in something that's a little bit more stable. Because if he got into Bitcoin 4 years ago, well, he just essentially just rolled it up.
Yeah.
And so I think that has a lot to do with that 1.7 million was that I think Bitcoin 4 years ago, I think it was under $10,000. So he was able to ride that up. Same thing with Neo and the same thing. We talked about GameStop. GameStop a year ago was $4. So he just had a really great run.
If you see here, he's a flight attendant. He can't name which one he is working for.
Yeah.
And he saved $40,000 over 4 years. So that means he saved $10,000 over 4 years. And this is my argument right here. When I tell people, if you save $27 a day, that's 10 grand a year. Yeah. I worked at food service, Papa John's Pizza, and I worked at a restaurant, Logan Steakhouse. And I would meet waitresses who were like, oh, yeah, I got 20K in savings. And you'd be like, yeah, right. And they would show it to you. And I'd be like, how you get that? And it's like $27 a day.
Yeah.
And it's really like the math is way smaller. And I think immigrant population understands that. So he saved 40 grand over 4 years. And he invested the entire amount in Bitcoin on the Brerex exchange at an average price of 4,200 around August 13th and August 28th, 2017, accumulating 9 tokens. That's wow. That's wow.
Yep. That's that wow. Bitcoin. So that means it's a great situation for him. But yeah, I would take my money and try to put it in something a little bit more stable, like real estate.
He sold it. He sold sold his Bitcoin. Okay. And then he took that money and that's when he focused on stock market. So
okay.
Yeah, and he got the little printout so you can see his account. Okay. I understand it. He gonna show you. So he bought 15,000 shares of NIO in January.
Yeah, NIO, yeah.
And then another 6,000 shares of it. And so he has a total of 2,000 shares of that. He also has, what's the other one? OGI or Grandma Holdings. I'm sorry. And Canadian cannabis company Opera. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm butchering these. He also has
Tilray. Okay, was brought by Tilray. Yeah.
Yeah. So then he sold more, and after 2020 he sold 24,000 shares of NI. He originally bought it at $7. He ended up selling it when it was $46. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he was walking off with that. Yeah. He having it. I mean, look, you got your it's $1.1 million. Boy, go ahead and sit down.
Yeah.
He bought 50,000 shares of GameStop at $22.
See, so he got in right before the move.
What?
Yeah, he got in right before the move. And even at 22, to me, that was kind of high, but he probably saw it and moving up. So he got in right before the move. And that thing shot to like $400 or $500 or $347. Yeah, so it was great timing. But that's the power of the market, where if you do have the correct timing, it can make you rich in a very short amount of time. But then I would tell him, pull some of that money out. You got to pull it all out, but pull some of it out and try to figure out something that's going to be a little bit more stable, that can be a lot more long term.
He also there's another guy who's a crypto trader that's 33. He put some money in Dogecoin, made him $2 million.
Yeah.
This is wow, y'all. This is wow.
People was getting the Dogecoin when it wasn't even worth a penny and just putting like thousands of dollars into it, and then it blew up like 60 cents and they cashed out.
So here's the crazy part. He said his shares would have been worth 17 million if he sold GameStop around the peak in January.
Yep.
And he said those shares would still be worth 12 million if he owned them today. So he apparently sold some shares of this and some shares of that. Like he's been pulling some out. No, he sold them at 33.
That's nothing wrong with that.
He bought it at, but think about that. You bought it at 22.
Yeah, that's a good deal. Show them at, because
he said, look,
who would have thought? Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought GameStop would be worth $300?
Well, even if I put in my calculator right now, 50,000 shares at 33 is what? Let me see. Hold on. 50,500. Excuse me. At $33, that's 1.6 mil. Okay, I get what I get what he's saying.
Yeah, because he had volume, so it's time to get out.
I know he kicking himself.
Yeah.
But $500,000 push up, ain't that bad.
Yeah, especially in 4 years.
That's bananas.
So
Look, that's his car when he's working. I love it. He said his company pays for his apartment where he lives, of course, a number of years with other people, and he has a 2011 Ford Figo. Okay. That's hilarious. Especially, you know what it is? He's in Dubai. So, when you talk about money, he's like, nah, I ain't got that much money.
Yeah, I feel you. Especially not out there. He need to make sure you get a good insurance policy, though.
Okay, listen, somebody looking for him.
Yeah.
Somebody said he had that Jeremy Lin run. He had
Exactly.
the best.
Yeah. He had a great run.
Listen, if he'd have kept it, and I bet he do be like, oof, oof, 17 million.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think that's hilarious. But hey, you live, you learn, right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
it'll be another GameStop in the future the way this market is operating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so last but not least, I wanted to hit up the iHeartRadio conversation. And I
Okay, let's
wanted
do it.
people to understand the relationship. These aren't just numbers on a paper. You actually, when you have these shares, you have ownership of these companies. Hold on, I'm gonna read this. I think this is a good one. When in the stock market, know your next play. It could be real estate or more shares of another company, but know your next play. It's very
Yep.
true. So you talked about iHeartRadio, and I'll let you set that up a little bit if you could flesh it out for us here, just a little
Okay,
bit.
so no problem. So I just wanted to try to get our audience to understand, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but that I think is challenging for us is that we are presented ideas about how we can get things that we want to get in the world and how we can become empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is we're not in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to get people to do what you want to do or get people to see your point of view when you're not in a position of power. So what you kind of end up doing is just begging them or you end up acting out. Both things are a lot of times counterproductive to getting what you want. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I really wanted to expose the audience to is that when we have issues with a particular scenario and that company is publicly traded,
Mm-hmm.
we can, as owners, insert ourselves into an ownership position. And then now, as investors or owners of that particular company, we can now start to not dictate, but suggest some of the changes that we want made in that particular company. So looking at iHeart is the #1 radio corporation in the country. They own, almost 1,000 stations, and they pretty much determine the programming that you're listening to when you're on the radio. So what you got to really understand is that they're very broad. They have a lot of reach. They're also now going into the podcasting space. So if we want to start influencing the content that they're creating around us and how we're presented in the media, we can do that as owners of this particular company just by owning their particular shares. And then when they have shareholders meetings and things of that nature, we can start expressing our point of view. And because we're owners, they're going to have to listen to us or deal with some of the consequences that we can impose on them as owners of that company.
So prime example why I love this concept and I wanted to bring it out. I think he can't hear me. He'll be back. Part of why I want to bring this up, you guys, is I am an owner of several REITs. And it's not uncommon for me to get in my mailbox, hey, this is the shareholder meeting. We'd like you to vote on this piece of paper. Here's this pamphlet. And so, I've realized they printed out probably millions of pamphlets and sent them out. And how much does that cost and paperwork? But what I realize is I always vote. I will not be a silent shareholder because I see it and I understand the power of it. And that's why I thought this was such a great concept, because when I share it with people, people don't understand that. So I think he did a great job of explaining. And so Diamond Dave, if you can hear me, I essentially told them how I own a lot of REITs. I've invested heavily in a lot of REITs, and there's a few, always disclaimer, there were years where I heavily invested into the stock market, but on the super passive side. And so I was telling them I always get in the mail these quarterly, sometimes these once a year packets, and it'll be from the company going, hey, you're a shareholder with this many shares, and if you want to vote, here's your form, and you can mail it in. And a lot of people probably just toss those things aside and read them a little bit. I vote every time. I check a little box and I mail it in because I want them to acknowledge my little 100 shares or my little 50 shares here and there. I know people who have 12,000 shares of a hotel share. Try not to tell his business, but he literally gets perks in the mail. He gets different things, perks in the mail. And he literally became a titanium member. Now every time he goes to a hotel, off the rip. So what I want people to understand is this is the iHeart Media, and this is the max chart, because really they only been out here, Diamond Dave, since 2019?
Yeah, 2019. Because I think they either they merged or they bought out another company and they just started retrading on the iHeart.
And iHeart Radio comes here to Austin, Texas, and does a country music concert. When you talk about ads, right? Podcasting, most people think Spotify. right now. That's they only recently think Spotify because of the Joe Rogan thing. Before that, it was a lot of Apple, but actually, iHeartMedia and Pandora. I think Pandora is number
Yeah.
one, and then iHeartMedia is number two. And so I'm not here promoting this. Disclaimer: I do own one share of this. After I watched Diamond Dave, I was like, I'm gonna buy one share, but I'm really gonna actively, heavily invest in them because the future is podcasting.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And I try to explain it to people like this. We used to have radios in every local town, every small town had a radio. Everybody, lots of radio DJs. It wasn't uncommon for you to know a radio DJ, especially in the 80s, right? And so I'm gonna do it like this. You used to have local television, and your aunt and uncle could have a Sunday show at the local television. You used to have, radio spots where people could have Sunday radio, which they still do here in Austin and lots of cities. You can pay for a 2-hour, 3-hour time slot on the radio. Podcasting is that next door.
Yep.
It goes back to that old 1980s that really got taken away by Bill Clinton. There was a bill that was like, oh, we're going to make media more fair. Well, then it took away all these black radio stations,
Exactly.
thousands of black radio stations all across the United States because they couldn't pay the fees.
Yep.
They couldn't. They were up there applauding this thing, and then within 6 months they were all out of business because they didn't understand what was really happening in this law.
Yep.
So lots of famous black radio stations disappeared overnight. Well, now you have this thing where, and I'm going to just be honest, we still have that need for local, relatable news. We just do. And podcasting is going back to that, right? Sunday radio here, for a long time, I tried to buy a Sunday radio spot. And I couldn't get it because it's always booked. But I'm meeting people who have whole radio talk shows, and it's changed their financial life, their business life. So podcasting is going to be a big wave in the future. So I plan on, as much as possible, getting up to 1,000 to 10,000 shares of iHeartMedia while it's cheap, because I know, yes, there's millions of shares, but the significance of every time you get a little voting, I'll be like, vote my little vote, right? Because it's just it's powerful because you are a shareholder. So.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something real fast. And so a lot of your audience may be too young to remember this, but this actually took place. So there's an artist. He now does a lot of television. His name is Ice-T. And years ago in the 90s, he put out a song that a lot of police unions did not like. And his particular record contract was owned by a company named Time Warner. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was they expressed this displeasure in the public about the content that he was creating. They felt it was derogatory to police officers, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't work to get the song pulled. Mm-hmm. What happened is now is they approached it from the shareholder level. They even had, and y'all might remember this actor, he has passed away, but he was real big in acting in the 60s and the 70s. He was in the original Planet of the Apes. It's a guy named Charleston Heston. Yes. And he stood up at the shareholders meeting. He expressed that he was very displeased as a shareholder that Time Warner was producing this type of content that was derogatory to police officers. And then you had other shareholders also express that type of displeasure, right? Because they were owners of the company. Mm-hmm. Eventually, Time Warner made Ice-T pull that song off of his particular album, and it was no longer available. And I think eventually Ice-T ended up on a whole nother record label. And they did that because they approached it from an ownership standpoint. Now, if we fast forward years later, there was a congresswoman named Maxine Waters, I believe. Mm-hmm. And she got with another guy, I forgot his name, and they started talking about rap music. But if you study her, she never talked about approaching this from an ownership standpoint. Mm-hmm. It was always, well, we're just going to protest and we're going to get upset, yada, yada, yada. And so we got to understand this. And one of the reasons why we may not be as effective as we desire is because we don't understand the power of ownership, having an equity position in a particular situation. And then now we can start to influence how things go. If we feel like people are doing things that are derogatory to us, what we're told to do is just get upset, get loud, go at the person on social media. And that really doesn't work when they have a whole corporation backing them up. Ice-T at one time had Time Warner backing him up. When Time Warner decided we can no longer support you, he was out on his own because Time Warner realized this guy's bad for our business and our ownership, our shareholders don't like us. And if we get a big enough position in any company, iHeartMedia is just an example, they will be worried about what can happen to their particular shares. If we say, well, you know what, if we don't get this to go the way we want it to go, we'll just dump 5% of our position. So if we just form a big fund and we buy 10% of iHeartMedia, their actual float, and then we tell them, well, you know what, if things don't go the way we want them to go with the kind of content that you're producing about us, we'll dump 5% of our ownership to the market, or we'll do what we call a negotiated bid and dump it at 5% less than an ask. So they call like a block trade.
Mm-hmm.
That can really affect them. And then what they will now have to do is negotiate with us on another level. So we really got to understand is that a lot of times we are being presented with a game to play to try to get what we want.
Yeah.
That's really not effective, but it kind of fulfills our emotional needs. But it doesn't get us correct long term, which means we got to keep doing it to get that emotional need fed because it's really not that productive.
Listen, we could do a whole cancel culture video on just that alone.
Yeah.
That cancel culture doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't. And I'm gonna leave it alone today. But we're gonna do a video on it because I know what I want to say, and I'm like, promote. These companies have enough money to promote past your anger.
Exactly.
And that's really the truth of it. If you promote for 3 months, the average American then forgot about it.
Exactly.
I keep telling everybody every other year, Bank of America gets this lawsuit for discrimination, and they have to pay out $40 million, $1 billion every couple of years. It's the same dog and pony show. And somebody goes, well, I got Bank of America. They just gave me $17,000 in a grant to close on my house. And I go, do you know why? Because they lost this lawsuit again.
Yeah.
So like I was badgered when I went to go get pre-approved for my house. Like literally they were knocking down my door like Bank of America's like, you need this. Here's the 17 grand. Here you go. It's free money. You ain't got to worry about it. And I was asking the mortgage lender, like, what's up? Why they keep trying to get this to me? Oh, Bank of America, that lawsuit. So they're just trying to make sure they're fulfilling the other side of the lawsuit by making sure people of color and women get housing.
Yep.
And so it's like, you don't even, and I've seen white couples get this. So I'm not even trying to be funny. Like they got to pay this money back. And so these things have consequences, but it's cash money. And that's the thing. People like, I'm going to write blogs about it. I'm a podcast about it. I'm going to write up articles about it. And I'm like, are you going to put some money on it?
Exactly.
If you ain't going to put no money on it, ain't nobody care.
Exactly.
And we're coming. And I thought when Donald Trump got in here that people understood that, but I guess they didn't. That
now they're getting, because the problem with Trump is that a lot of people are very invested in keeping the wool over our eyes. So then what they do is that because they're invested, that is like their position in society, they keep moving the needle. And the problem with a lot of the initiatives that we've been taught to take, they're just emotional. So, the problem with emotion is that eventually it goes down. So then we got to do another initiative to get it back up. So we cancel culture this person. Now we're looking for people to cancel in society. Or we get upset over this issue, but now we're looking for people. So what I tried to explain in that video was that instead of getting upset at this particular person, understand that one, they're operating as part of a corporate structure of a publicly traded company. If iHeartMedia was privately owned, they would have a lot more leeway. iHeartMedia is a publicly owned company, which means that once we buy into this particular company, the CEO works essentially on our behalf. His job is to increase shareholder price. But we now can start to direct what kind of content that they're creating. We can get enough of an equity position. And we also can direct who sits on the board. So one of the reasons why Warren Cohen was able to get such a big position at GameStop is because he bought so many shares. Then he was able to start imposing what he wanted to do on that particular company. Why? Because I own so much of the company, I can start having a say-so. So I just think this is really, really important that a lot of these things are not brought to us. And we're taught to do so many things that are really not effective. And it's very unfortunate in a country like America, where we have the ability to participate in this economy at such a deep level, that we're not taught to do that. If we were living in another part of the world, I could understand why we do some of the stuff that we do. But we have a lot more access here, but we're never taught by our influencers and our leaders to get involved in this type of stuff, because that keeps us in the same position.
You know who I'm thinking of? Meek Mill.
Yeah.
Meek Mill, and I feel bad for him because he gotta be careful. But Meek Mill, every time he announces something, it drops the next day. Dogecoin, GameStop, any of them, it always has a drop the next day. And it's like, if you're a person who's following him and you get in and it dropped the next day, you're gonna be disheartened.
Yeah.
So good or bad, like Chamillionaire is somebody I wish would speak more.
Yeah.
But we ain't trying to hear that because he's not as popular, right? Chamillionaire is already. He's gonna be on the Forbes billionaire list, but we ain't paying attention to that.
Exactly.
We completely miss the people that are what they're doing. Slim Thug, he's out here building Houston, building hundreds of homes at a time.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so the real power is in the money side of things, and people really don't hear that. So I was looking at the shares of this company, and they have a volume of 981,000,
Yeah.
but a market cap of 3 billion.
Yep.
How many shares do you think someone would have to buy to have a significant conversation?
I mean, I
Or
don't think you. I think of the group. We can look at. I don't know how big their float is,
mm-hmm.
but I think we should look to get minimum of 5% of the float.
I'm scrolling down now. I'm looking.
Yeah, 5% of the float, because if we threaten to dump 5% of the float, that can have a big impact. And definitely, and we get 5% of the float and then just keep amassing, because one of the things we talked about iHeartRadio is that they're going heavily into podcasting, which is the future. And so the share prices should only continue to go up. This is relatively, as a publicly traded company, they're relatively a new ticker. So we understand that long term, they're going to have a really big future, because we understand that podcasting is a secular change in America. And they look like they know how to really build it out. They're very segmented. They understand their market segments. So we got to start getting a position now and just making them understand is that we don't want you producing content about people that look like us that we think is going to be derogatory, because that's what other groups do. And I'm going to give you an example. You have other groups in this country. They'll produce negative content about other groups of people, but they will not let you produce negative content about them. They will not allow you to do it. So you got to understand that's the way the game is played.
You saw what happened to the guy who got shut down on all social media. He had a song about Asians, and they shut him down on every platform, Apple, Spotify, you name it. He got shut down, and it was just one of his hundreds of songs.
Exactly.
Complete shutout. And he's sitting there at home like, what just happened? And you have to understand that it's the monies. It's the monies.
It's the money.
So
that's something that I really want our people to start to really understand, is that, you know, for some reason we're taught to either get involved with the emotional outbursts or to not deal with it, but we're not taught an alternative to actually get to power. And what I really want to start us having conversations about, how can we get to power? Because we see with certain people is the reason why they don't touch certain subjects, because they understand that there's a group of people behind those subjects, to where if you say something that they don't like, they're coming to hammer you and they're coming to punish you. And a lot of times they're going to start with the people that's above your head, and they're going to come down on top of you. They're not going to even start with you. So we see certain celebrities have had to fix things that they said. And I remember Michael Jackson was one of the biggest recording stars in the world. He put out a song with lyrics that certain people didn't like, and they made him change the lyrics. And this was Michael Jackson. So you got to understand is that, but certain groups will put out content, like I said before, that can be derogatory to certain groups, that those groups may be like, well, we don't like the content that they put out, but they will never allow people to put content out that's going to be derogatory to their group, because they understand that's how the game is played. So we don't have to put out derogatory content about other people, but we got to start looking at how can we make it to where you can't just produce any kind of content about our group, and we can't do anything but just yell and scream at you on social media.
Also, I'd like to appreciate if he's in this show or he's from the other channel, Orion sent a $20 super cash app. He said, appreciate the info. Thank you for supporting the channel.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, the CG3 put iHeartRadio public float is 101 million shares.
Yep.
Outstanding is 112 million. So what would you think off that? 10% of that?
I would think 5 to 10%. 5 to 10%, because a 5% dump of a share is a lot. I would look at, because their trading volume every day is not a lot.
It's not.
It's not.
So you'd be like, they'd be like, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Exactly. Their trading volume every day is not a lot. And I remember back in the day when I think it was a California pension fund for teachers, they owned big shares in Disney. And they were able to dictate some of the things, not dictate, but have a lot of influence on some of the things that Disney did. And so this is how the game's played. I keep telling people all the time is that a lot of these police unions, they own equity in certain companies, and they're able to dictate how these particular things play. They also give money to politicians. So we're not necessarily taught this game, is we're kind of taught that we just should get upset over everything, or we should be alarmists. We should look to find what's wrong with this. And like you say, do blog posts about it and do think pieces and do YouTube videos. But that's not how this game is played in America. This is a different game. And I think we've never really been taught how this game is played in America to get what we want. And there's been groups that with less people than us in America that are able to get what they want out of America because they understand the game that is being played. We got to stop trying to play football by basketball rules. It don't work that way.
Tell these people, listen, I keep telling people and we'll do that for another show, but this lady's like, why do you start businesses and hire staff and do this? And I'm like, I'm like, girl, the way the bank treats me when I go up in there.
Yeah.
Like I get the manager comes. Oh, hold on, Miss Williams. And people don't realize, like, well, Erica, you only own these couple of companies. I'm like, there's a person in my bank. He only talks to people if they do a meal, right? They only talk.
Yeah.
He only talks to do a meal. That man came out one day when I was there. Because I would come there all the time for stuff, and he's like, "Hey, Miss Williams, this man ain't never spoke to me ever before. He going by, going off, going by. That day he stopped, turned, hello, Miss Williams. I didn't introduce myself. So again, the banks know. Listen, it's a money game, and so, yeah, Bridget, that's the silliest thing. Get upset, running the streets and block traffic.
Exactly.
And you know, right now we have a company here in Austin where they got upset and they did a strike. Well, within the next day, they was all back to work because Texas is a right to work state.
Exactly. Right.
It was like, okay, well, y'all got 24 hours
exactly
to be up in here, or everybody's liquidated. Have a great day. And you know, so again, I get what you're saying, and I'm very serious that if you notice some of these people with podcast shows, the ads they have on the show dictate a lot of the show. So
exactly.
But anyway, so yeah, I mean, you know. But yeah, you guys, I hope this was a good show for y'all. I hope y'all got good information out of this. I hope you are encouraged to buy some iHeartMedia shirts because I think, you know, it shouldn't always be the silliest out here in the podcasting world. That's just my 2 cents. And how they did Joe Budden, I'm still like, how are you number one and don't get paid? That don't make no sense to me.
I feel
that's not okay. So, all right, you guys, this is your girl Erica from Classic on Blog. Dave, tell them where they can find you in your course.
Yeah, so you can find me on the internet at YouTube _, I think it's David Williams, or either Diamond _Dave. Instagram Diamond _Dave. I'm also on Facebook. My particular course is www.thehighestpaidparttimeJobInTheWorld.com. Erica may have the link. And what we're going to try to do is, as an options trader, really put you in a position where you can get minimum $2K a month out of the market. And that is going to be a minimum. Situations like this with GameStop, you can get way more than that. But what I really want to try to do is to give you the skill set to where you can make money in the market, whether the market's going up, the market's going down. I have a track record of having success in being able to do that. And I'm confident that if you stick with me and work with me, after we start really understanding how this market works, I can put you in a position and you can start being able to live the life that you desire because you're not worrying about income instability and things of that nature. So I really want to encourage you to reach out to me about the course. Reach out to Erica if she has a particular link. She can link you to that particular course, and let's go ahead and get started. Because like I said before, I think 2020 is going to be the year where we're going to really look back and realize that so many people came into the market as a result. And when now we have this whole new group of traders that's generational traders, and 2020 is going to be the year. So even though it's 2021, it's not too late. Go ahead and get in.
All right, listen, you guys. Well, definitely, I think next week we'll be off on break. I will, if I'm not mistaken, what's next weekend? The 5th? The 5th. Possibly, well, nope. The 5th we'll have one more show, and then the week after that I'll be in Alaska, so we will have no show of that. And the week after that, I think I'll actually be in Florida. So if I ever get a chance to get up north, I may see if we could do an in-person show with me and Diamond Dave. We'll see if it's possible. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff coming up in the future, and we'll post the schedule here soon. And the links for his course and his information will be in the description and the show. Thank you, guys.
All right, talk to you later.